Okay, well, thank you. I want to thank you all for inviting me. This invitation was given to me months ago, and I was freaking out over, never having done this by Zoom before. I'm always up in front of the group in person. This is like the third or fourth time I've given this, so I kind of know what I'm going to say, but the technical part is always my big bugaboo. Um, I have been a professional writer since the late 90s. I started out working for the Sacramento Bee, well, not working for them, but contributing to a section. And my little column in their Sunday or Saturday section became syndicated, and that's how I got on the New York Post. So I never really worked for the New York Post or I contributed to those publications. I did blog for about 2 years for Forbes, and I have been blogging for Psychology Today since, oh gosh, I think it's been 6 or 7 years now. So I have to keep up with that though. And there's a lot of things I can talk about with aging, believe me. Um, I'm not going to try to convince you that I have hundreds of audiobooks under my belt. I went into audiobook narration a couple of years ago because I had always wanted to do something like this. I had not been up on stage, but I had been offered jobs by radio stations and things like that, saying, oh, you're a natural for this. And I'm going, well, okay, but I don't want to work in the clock tower at Ghirardelli Square. At 1 o'clock in the morning, which is how you get started in radio, is taking, all the worst jobs. So I kind of left it alone. And when I knew that people were doing audiobooks at the time, it was only professional studios and you had to be invited by an agent. And then it was much more complicated. Now that we have studios in our homes, and I'll get into that with my presentation, we can do audiobooks from anywhere. And I have my little studio up in my guest room. So it's very, very quiet up there, except when lawnmowers are going. Um, I am a relative rookie. 2 years into this means that I'm fairly new to it, but I do love to educate as well. I have a teaching background. So when I thought of doing this little PowerPoint for writers groups, I thought, well, I am a writer. Why don't I introduce all of this to writers so they understand how audiobooks came to be and what you can do with them and how we do this for you as the voices in your books. Um, all right. And one thing I love about doing writers groups is that I get to meet you in person when we want to talk about your book. So if you've got a romance novel you want to do and you're thinking, well, I would love to talk about what each character would sound like and what they might even look like. And it's so much easier to meet across a restaurant table and do a table read with you than it is to do all of it long distance, which I do most of the time. So ACX is a part of Amazon owns Audible, Audible owns ACX, and ACX is the narrator's channel so that when you go in and list a book that you want to have narrated, you want to have people audition for it, then you invite us, you tell us what it is you want, how you want it to sound. I just did an entire short story in a British accent, and it was so much fun, but it was a lot of work. So you tell us what you want, and then you wait for auditions to come in. And that could be, anybody in the United States. So, I could have a client out in New York, and it's not as much fun that way. You don't really get to know your authors as much. When I started doing these PowerPoint presentations for local writers groups, I found that, I can talk to you in person and meet with you, and it's a much more personal situation. So I've done a couple of, Clay Kerbo is one of the authors from the Sacramento group, and Karen Phillips, she has a series of books that I'm doing. So it's a lot of fun to meet with you personally, and that's why meeting authors is so much more fun. How did I get into it? I mimic things. I don't know if any of you ever did that growing up, but my brothers and I were crazy, and we would mimic movie characters, cartoon characters, accents of every kind. I mean, I speak a couple of languages, but I always like to mimic foreign languages. So if you went into my website, which is dinacormetis.com, you'll hear my French, Russian, German, British, all my accents in there, and they are all of my voices. It's great bathroom entertainment when you want to use it on your phone. And so when I went into this, I thought, well, nobody's ever heard these voices that are inside of me. And everybody's going, oh, it's so hard to get into this. Well, once I became this narrator that can do accents, I had an advantage over other narrators. So I started in right away getting contracts. And then that's how I got into it, and I love it. Now, having been a writer all these years, and I still write every day, but I'm a copywriter basically. That means I get up every day and I write an article for real estate, architecture. I have a whole bunch of stuff I write about, and I write for a bot. So my name is not on it. A bot is like an agenda where if you were a real estate agent and you wanted a blog, you could use my words and it will disseminate it for you. So it's kind of hard to understand. But the writing that I do on a daily basis is rather formulaic. Okay. So it's not as much fun as what you do. I'm very good at that. I mean, I know how to put a catchy title up there and how to start the article, but I have never written fiction in my life. And I tried once, and my hat is off to you. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you come up with these ideas. I love to read your stuff out loud, but if I sat down and tried to make up a fiction story, I would be SOL. So I have a great respect for what you do. And unlike other narrators, I am a writer. So I take your words very, very preciously before I even suggest what I want to do with them. So I do see myself as a little different from other voice actors. Um, my home studio is, like I said, in my guest room. And we are the hidden figures of the book industry. We buy our mics, we get our laptops, we put baffles on our walls. Some people surround themselves with moving blankets so that the sound is good. We're constantly trying to improve the sound so that we sound as first of all, there's standards that Audible and ACX will only accept, and you have to meet those standards. So I personally, because you know I'm tech challenged, I have a guy that does that stuff for me. So I send him my audio files and he engineers them. I'm also doing his books, so it's kind of a nice arrangement. And I'll talk about the book I'm doing with him now. It's a sequel. So we are kind of the hidden figures of the book industry, and I would say that these little home studios have really only exploded over the past 10 years or so. It's not like it used to be where you went into a studio and they, had a director and they told you what to do, although that still happens. Um, okay, I'm on the screen that says, this is what we're up against. Um, and this is what happens sometimes when I'm in my studio. It's not fun. I have to stop my recording. There can be leaf blowing. There can be people putting their garbage cans out. There could be swimming pools surround me here in Sacramento. So, Marco Polo is my friend. So that's not really fun. I got to catch up with my notes here. Sorry. So I'm going to go into the history of audiobooks, and I'm going to go all the way back to oral storytelling. Oh, there it is. Oh, I did skip over something. That's all right. Okay, so if you heard stories from your parents and grandparents, this goes back even farther than that. But the way that we learn is audio. That's how as children, that's how we learn. It's telling front porch tales, bedtime stories. Um, in the time, the very act of oral storytelling creates a curiosity that gets kids wanting more, and that's a very good thing. I read to my daughter until she was blue in the face, and she became a New York Times best-selling author. So go figure. But it is reading out loud that gets people hooked. In most cases, we hope that they look at our words in print and feel the same things, but often oral storytelling adds a different dimension to your words. To my daughter, I read her things like The Sidewalk Never Ends, Light in the Attic, Shel Silverstein. We went to plays together. And I guess it did a lot for her because she really took the ball and ran with it. So the stories actually begin with us. We are read to, we read to our children, and we want to capture the stories from the generations that preceded our own. We grab our iPhones, we hit record, and we just ask them to talk to us. So I've been writing my own memoirs now for years, not because it's ever going to get published. It's because I want my daughter to know who I really am outside of just being her mom. I want her to know about my childhood, my family, people in the old country, people she's not even met that were part of my life. And in that way, if you're going to write your own memoirs for one of your children or grandchildren, it's great to just hit the record button on your phone and then put it into print later or to digital later, because we are at our most relaxed when we're speaking, not when we're reading something the way I am right now. Um, I was asked by a writer friend of mine in the San Francisco area. He's a journalist and a theater critic to proof. I was asked to proof chapters of his first book called Foundation: A Guide to Successful Writing, Everything You Didn't Learn in English Class. And in his first chapter, titled Write for the Ear, Not for the Eye, this is a quote: Human language is an auditory phenomenon. It developed over hundreds of thousands of years to be spoken, sung, whispered, and shouted. Its hundreds of varieties can convey an astounding array of information, observations, and emotions, all through the deceptively simple process of hearing. Spoken language predated its visual depiction by many millennia, but in the modern era of nearly universal literacy, we have been taught to write for the eye, not for the ear. Graphic designers and teachers of speed reading may think otherwise, but it goes against the thrust of evolution. At its core, language will always be auditory. Writers who fail to grasp this are doomed to generate reams of impenetrable, pointless narratives far more effective at inducing lethargy than anything ever developed by the pharmaceutical industry. He has a great sense of humor, too. Bookstores and the internet are full of such stuff. Books that you toss aside after the first two chapters, online articles that don't hold your interest sufficiently for you to click over to the next page. And these are works that have survived the editorial gauntlet and made it into print. So imagine all of those that have gotten rejected. His final bit of advice is listen to your own voice. Develop your own voice. Make your work sing from the page, and you will elevate yourself above the world's hordes of wooden-eared writers. Does that make sense to everybody? Um, so here's an abridged history of the advent of audiobooks. An audiobook by any other name is known as a talking book. That's what they were called at first. The recording of a book or other work that is read out loud. Oral histories are a tradition that probably go back to some prehistoric guy grunting in a cave, coming back and telling his family that he just killed a lion, and then the mother tells the stories to the kids. The kids start scribbling on the sides of the walls of the cave, and now we've got oral storytelling that's being recorded, which is how we know about a lot of what happened in prehistoric times, is through the etchings on the wall. So if you think about it, it all started with oral storytelling. And once they get etched, future generations would read them out loud, and boom, the first audiobook. This is a recording cylinder. How many of you saw the movie The King's Speech? Are you familiar with that? This was used in The King's Speech. I'll talk about that in a second. So we'll fast forward to the 1800s, early 1900s, when short word recordings were sold on cylinders. Thomas Edison was the inventor of this type of recording. Audiobooks emerged in 1932 with the establishment of a recording studio by the American Foundation for the Blind. As for the media, movies and TV prioritized closed captioning for the hearing impaired long before they began requiring audio description for the sight impaired. You know that when you go on Hulu or Netflix, you can hit a little button that says if you are visually impaired, you can do the audio description, and audio description will tell you what's going on the screen without really describing with adjectives how it looks to you without giving an opinion. So if you go to my website, you'll see when you scroll down a little bit, 3 movies that I did an audio description, and you'll see how that sounds. So Geoffrey Rush was playing on a cylinder. He was playing the king's words back to him because the king stammered in the king's speech. And of course, the king didn't listen to it for a while, and then he finally put the record on and realized that when his brain was not concentrating on how his voice sounded, he really could speak without stammering. So each side of a recording cylinder held about 15 minutes of speech. Initial recordings included William Shakespeare's plays, The Constitution, and the novel As the Earth Turns by Gladys Hasty Carroll. I don't know who she is. It sounds like a soap opera anyway. More recording companies slowly emerged, mostly to assist people with visual impairment. And there are stories of pioneering companies at that time emerging and becoming very successful. Audiobooks began gaining popularity in the 1990s and 2000s due to advancements in digital technology. Now we get into publishing. Publishing houses. In case you hadn't noticed, the publishing industry has really shrunk a lot. So here's a little condensed timeline for you. The 1900s ushered in the heyday of mass market paperbacks, company mergers, thousands of bookstores around the corner, like big chain bookstores like Borders and Barnes and Noble, and the beginnings of digitization. The Great Depression hit small publishers and booksellers very hard, but a few companies came out on top. And did you know that at one time everybody thought paperbacks were going to kill hardcover books, and now everybody's thinking audiobooks are going to kill all books, which is not the case because everyone enjoys books differently. They thought Kindles would rob print, and that hasn't happened either. So you fast forward to ebooks and audiobooks, and what a difference a day makes. Powerful corporate publishing houses, often owned by media conglomerates in the US and abroad, began merging in the mid-1900s. So now you've got the giant chain booksellers and a cute movie about the little shop around the corner in Nora Ephron's movie and her book called You've Got Mail, which I thought was just adorable. And the mega bookstore opened just a few blocks away if you saw it. I'm such a movie person. I'm sorry if I'm using so many movie references, but that's just my whole world is I love movies. I think I probably would have worked in Hollywood had I started this differently. Just as independent booksellers had to compete with Borders and Barnes and Nobles, independent publishers had to find niches and audiences or books that would keep them afloat. It was the early 90s and 2000s, however, that were the most turbulent decades that publishing has ever seen. Think about internet, Google, iPod, Amazon, ebooks, self-publishing, and the recession, and our world was tossed upside down. Self-publishing has grown so much in numbers and in reputation that most houses have no choice now but to go digital, a very different game than it was even 50 years ago. I published my own little ebook memoir on Amazon 12 years ago. Didn't know I was going to go into audiobook narrating. And then I recently went in there and narrated my own memoir. And I have to say, you can narrate your own books and you can narrate your own memoir, but it's somehow much harder to do it with your own words than it is with other people's. And I can't quite explain that. Anyway, my little memoir is about a year of my life that I spent in Europe during college. And how it changed my life. I'd written a book for lendingtree.com. I think this was my first exposure to a recording studio, and this was back in the early 2000s. I was hired to. I made a book out of a lot of the newspaper articles that I'd written about the industry, and Tree got in touch, and they said, okay, well, we want your ebook, and they were going to make a podcast out of it, and they said we're going to have a narrator, and I went, oh, I want to read my own words. And they said, no, 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 you don't understand how hard that is. And I said, oh, if they're my words, why wouldn't I? That makes no sense to me. Anyway, I negotiated a little contract with them where I got to read my introduction and the conclusion of the book. And they hired a voice actress to do the rest. So I didn't believe them, but anyway, they flew me to New York, which was great. I took my husband with me. We stayed near the Central Park, and then they sent me to this recording studio right across from Madison Square Garden. And I go into this booth, and there's a director on the other side of the glass, and I start to read the introduction to my book, and he's stopping me, going, no, 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 you got to put a little more emotion. No, smile when you say that, you really need to sound a little more excited about this part. I was like going over my words over and over again. And I realized at that point why it was so hard to read my own stuff. And I didn't even realize that narration was that exacting. At any rate, I finished finally, walked out of the booth, and then I started listening to the voice actress that they had reading the rest of the book. And oh my gosh, it was like she was singing my words. I had never heard such a difference in how a book could sound until somebody did it correctly. So I was very impressed with how she read it, and it changed my whole idea of audiobook narration. Oh, this wasn't an audiobook, it was a podcast before podcasts really came into popularity. So, if you ever wondered how enthusiastically people are turning to Audible entertainment, here's some stats for you. Deloitte Center for Technology, Media, and Telecommunications predicted that in 2024, consumers worldwide will engage in audio entertainment to the tune of 1.7 billion podcast listeners, 270 million audiobook listeners monthly. Monthly. Combine that with the number of streaming music subscribers, radio listeners, and it's roughly half the world's population. Okay. As a member of the Audiobook Publishers Association, I received some graphics recently that I'll tell you about. Am I on slide 12? I'm not sure. This is the earliest. These are the earliest things that we go to look at. Remember the iPod? Those we have. My husband still uses one in his car. Um, Audiobooks are concerned, nothing goes backwards. So now more than half the population over age 18 has listened to an audiobook, and that percentage continues to rise. What I want you to know is this, especially those of us in my generation, and I'm in my 70s, have to go through a lot of paradigm shifts. And I don't know what age you all are, but I'm sure you're not far from me in age. We've always felt holding and feeling and smelling the pages of a real book with our names plastered on the cover, felt like the pinnacle of our career as a writer. In today's digital and audio world, many authors are sparing going directly to ebooks with an audiobook component. So yes, I know you can get books on demand. It's not nearly as expensive to publish a book in print as it used to be. But some people are even bypassing that depending on the genre. So, oh, here's some statistics. That's what I hadn't hit yet. It's because I can't see what's going on the side, and I've got you. Average number of audiobooks consumed. These are the most recent statistics, and you're going to have this in your recording so you can go back and see it. So, audiobook listeners are usually people very much on the go. How do audiobooks reach different markets than print books, you might ask? There's an entire population of people who now read because audiobooks are available to them. In the book world, we consider readers to be the stereotypical person who enjoys sitting down with a book by the fire, relaxing in a cozy corner with a cup of coffee or at the beach, with a novel in their hands. Audiobook listeners, however, are usually on the go. They're walking, they're doing chores, they're jogging, they're commuting to work, they're waiting in a line of cars for their kids to get out of school, and they're listening to audiobooks as they do it. Consequently, audiobooks reach a new demographic of book lovers. Naturally, there can be overlap between the two, between physical books, ebooks, and audiobooks, and some people will choose one over the other, depending on the context, their personal habits, preferences. I know my husband cannot listen to an audiobook. He doesn't have that. His attention span is different from mine. My attention span is that when I've got a book in my hands that I'm reading, especially if it's a fiction book, I want to get to the next dialogue. So I'll skip over things to see what the characters say next. So I've kind of an ADHD, which is my daughter is even worse at that than I am. So I will miss certain parts of your book because I'm just skipping over things. Whereas my husband will read every single word. And if he has to remind himself what was said, he'll go back 2 chapters just to find it. And we're all very different in that way. The truth is, those that have to have a book in their hands or beside or by their bedside probably won't switch to strictly audiobooks. And those who delight in hearing audiobooks on a tablet or reading them on a tablet usually will not buy the book in print. So it's unusual that they will use all different types of versions of your book. So audiobooks offer a much more expanded readership demographic, opening the door to a wider market for us to transmit ideas and stories to those who may be prevented from reading physical books or just don't want to. And you have to think also about the physically challenged, the visually impaired, those people with dyslexia, and simply those who do not have the time to sit down and read. Alexa, Waze, YouTube, iPhone. I mean, these are our lives. This is part of our life now, whether you like it or not. Um,
Mm.
and now AI is involved in all of this, right?
Mm.
Which I'm not going to get into very much here. Younger audiences have been listening to audiobooks on Alexa for years now, and classroom teachers are increasingly using audiobooks to teach subjects that often fail to rivet their attention. Um, as for how educators are using audiobooks in the classroom, there's several strategies that they incorporate. The first is to build excitement with a book. They use a teaser chapter, kind of like a movie trailer, to get the students excited about seeing the movie. Um, uh, that's what it would be like. For an audiobook, a teacher can play an audiobook clip from one of your books for the whole class and read it in a fun way and engage their students, and or play a chapter from an audiobook. And it's a great hook for reluctant readers or those who don't think they read very well to get engaged in the story. It's a way of introducing the story to them and igniting their imagination. Another activity is playing out in classrooms finds the teacher reading the opening chapter from 3 or 4 books and then asking the class which book is their favorite. What do they want to? So take a vote, right? And then the kids will choose which one they want to start on first. So they give their students agency over which book will be read next. Teachers are also sharing audio clips around schools, believe it or not, by placing QR codes on bulletin boards in hallways. So the kids will use their smartphone and they'll see, oh, what's this? They'll hit the thing and find out that it's a book that is very interesting. So it's great to get their attention that way.
Wow.
Making audio clips visible and accessible across the school encourages a shared reading environment. It breaks down barriers to reading by fostering discussions. Sometimes it's a structured, like a guess what happens next to deepen their engagement with a story, or they'll pause the audiobook on a cliffhanger and ask the students to imagine the direction the plot might take. So if you think about what we've lost in the classroom as opposed to what the future looks like and how kids learn, I'm not sure it's as good as it used to be when we were young. We moved to Indiana when I was, I don't know, 9. And I found out I was 6 months behind from California in reading and everything. So, and what I realized was that in Indiana, all you have is basketball and school. Because the winter times are so harsh over there, and the teachers were like a notch away, a couple notches above the California teachers that I left when I was here. But my English class, my English teacher was amazing. So obviously, all of you who are writers probably had experiences like that where there was a teacher that ignited something in you to become writers. So try to imagine what it might be like for younger children or your grandchildren. Their teacher makes some space, puts out some blankets and cushions, they dim the lights, they play an audiobook while showing a video of a log fire on a monitor. And how special does that sound? It just sounds so cute. The bottom line is that on a wider level, audio can help them see themselves as readers. It can demonstrate that reading can be a shared experience, a collective opportunity to come together and offer them the beauty of getting lost in a good book. From YouTube voice commands to GPS directions to podcasts to voice memos, so much of our engagement is now voice first. And yes, our youth is all geared to that. They're audio trained from a very young age. Will we be replaced? Not without a fight. Because of this, all books are eventually going to be put into audiobooks. Remember the ending of Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451? That was one of my favorite books. I actually got to meet Ray Bradbury. I was working at the Hyatt Regency San Francisco when I was in my 20s, and he checked in for a room. And I was so honored. I mean, I met all kinds of celebrities working there and at San Francisco Airport at one section of my life. But I was the most impressed with him. My brothers are going, "You didn't get Hank Aaron's signature? What's wrong with you?" And I'm going, "No, no, Ray Bradbury." So I said, "You know what? I read your book in high school and I didn't take it seriously enough. I didn't because I didn't like to read entire books. But when I saw the movie, it got me interested in reading the book again. And so I said, I reread your book as an adult, and I have to say, I loved that book. At the end of Fahrenheit 451, if you're not familiar with it, they were banning all kinds of books in this movie. It was supposed to be futuristic, and they were burning them everywhere. And people who kept physical books were arrested. At the very end of the movie, people had to memorize the book and tell it out loud to someone else to keep the book as part of our legacy. And I thought it was fascinating. It was one of the best movie endings I've ever seen. See, another movie, what can I say? So whether it's an AI digital voice or someone like me, all books will go audio. As for the topic of AI, I'm going to leave the discussion for another speaker to cover. I'm not going to say it's not the future because it is. Most of the requests I get over LinkedIn saying that I am a voice actor is saying, "Can we clone your voice?" And they're going to pay me good money to use my voice and clone it. Well, now I'm shooting myself in the foot to ever do another audiobook. And it's kind of a shame. Do I use AI? I use it sometimes when I'm writing articles to find a good title. A good title. I mean, when you go into AI, I use an app called Claude. I don't know if it's really for writers. And I will give it very specific instructions. And I will say, you know, give me a title for this article that I just wrote and give me a movie line for the opening. Give me several great titles. Capitalize the first letter only. Don't use any colons in the middle of it. I get really specific instructions. Make it clever or make it funny. And it will come back with like a whole list of things. Now I'm looking at the list and I don't like them all individually, but I'm taking part of one and part of another. And now I've got a title that really, really gets a person's interest. Because once I've written the whole article, I'm all burnt out. What am I going to call it? Sometimes it's fun to name it, but most of the time now I'm going into Claude and I'm saying, "Give me a great one." And it does. I'm probably never going to use AI for writing because when people get used to the way that you write, especially if you're a copywriter, they can tell if it's not your words anymore. There's a certain flavor to the way that you write. And I'm just not going to rob them of me. It would be kind of stupid. So AI is kind of like Google on steroids. The voice actor industry actually have people going to Congress to make rules so that we cannot have our voices cloned without our permission. Anytime we sign a contract to do a book now, most of us will send something to the author saying, you guarantee you will not use my voice for anything else. And that's only fair. We don't want to be cloned. We want to continue to work. So how does a voice actor bring new life to your words? First, I'll tell you the story of a narrating job I didn't get. It was a guy on ACX had published a title, and or he's you have to on ACX. I'll tell you how it works. You have to have your book already on Amazon in order to get people to audition for you. And his book was about foster kids, and his experience. He was a professional ball player, but he started life with his brother and sister as foster children, going from home to home. And all he said in his description was that he wanted a Southern accent. And so I love doing Southern accents. It's kind of fun. So I went into my version of the beginning of To Kill a Mockingbird, the way the lady was at the very beginning of the movie. And some of my favorite movies are, A River Runs Through It, To Kill a Mockingbird. They start with a narrator telling a story, and it just kind of brings you in. So I started with the Southern accent that they would say. The ladies, cool themselves off and bathe at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And it was just a fun way to read his book. And then I was imitating the children and his aunties and his grandmother. And I sent it to him. I think within an hour, he got in touch with me because I was just having fun with it. And he says, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even know that was my book I was listening to. It was so different than what I had imagined." And we talked for quite a while. We talked on the phone, actually. I don't know where he's located. I think he's up in Seattle. And we became good friends over this. He didn't choose me for the book because he realized that an entire chapter is supposed to sound like his dad. Like, his dad back in the 70s with the afro and the superfly and the accent and all that, which I could not do. I can do men's voices to a degree, and I think I'm pretty good at doing men's voices, but only for a limited amount of time. So I can, like I told you that I narrated a British, a short story with a British accent. Well, I had to go back. I had to go back and correct some of my pronunciations because British people say words like laughter. They don't say laughter, they say laughter. If I said laughter, it's too British. If I say laughter with my mouth open, it's better. They pronounce words, when I caught a word that didn't sound like it matched, I had to go back and do what we call pickups, which is correcting what I said before. And then I send it to my audio engineer and he pastes it over. So it was more challenging than I thought. He wanted it all done in a BBC British accent. And I had a bunch of fun with it, but I'm not sure I'll read an entire book in a British accent. It's very taxing. But anyway, I think what I got out of the whole experience with this book that I didn't get was that I realized what it's like for the author to listen to someone else take their words and do something totally unexpected. And that's what I had done for him. Um, and it made me feel great about what I do because we do take your books and do something. Sometimes we go in a different direction with a character. I like to do the nemesis in a story if I can. Right now, I'm voicing a book that's a sequel for a post-apocalyptic story. It's a novel, and there's demons all over the book. There's a scholar, there's soldiers, there's all kinds of people in this story, in this world that he has created in this book. And post-apocalyptic, I mean, fantasy novels, they are so long. So it's taking me forever to do this book. But I decided that his main character really should sound British because British the British accent lends towards nefarious characters. It lends towards, the bad guys. British accent or Russian or German. What do we see in movies? They're all the worst people have those accents because we're supposed to not like them, which is kind of a shame for those nationalities. But in this case, I wanted to be the female Alan Rickman for his main demon. But I love to do that main character, so I have to lower my voice and sound extremely nefarious and open my mouth differently when I do it. And oftentimes I stand when I'm reading him because if I sit, I can't do the proper body language. So I have a lot of fun with that stuff, but it really does wear on you after a while. You have to be very concentrated with it. Um, Let me see here. Yeah, that the guy with the foster kids, he described the way that I had done his Southern accent book as sitting in front of a fire with a warm blanket, which is why I put this picture up there. And to this day, I'll never forget that was one of the first books that I got a response on. So when a voice actor sees your words for the first time, they do a lot more than just read your book. Like real actors, we try to become your characters. We crawl inside your story, inside your characters, inside your head, and we try to bring it to life. We often give you an outsider's insight on how your story appeals to the reader. Some of my favorite audiobooks are those done by real actors. I don't know if any of you listen to audiobooks, but if you listen to some done by actors that you know, it's truly a treat. So some of the ones that I've loved listening to was The Handmaid's Tale, which was Claire Danes who read it, who narrated it. The Dutch House, Tom Hanks. I mean, how do you beat Tom Hanks, right? Meryl Streep did Tom Lake. Go Set a Watchman, which is the sequel to To Kill a Mockingbird, is read by Reese Witherspoon in her natural Southern accent, and it just transports you to listen to real actors do these books. Recently, I listened to Matthew McConaughey read his own memoir, and it's called Green Lights. It's like you're watching a movie of Matthew McConaughey, and you can't beat that either. The power of the human voice. We have very colorful palettes in our voices. We paint emotions into our words with our voices. Happiness, I'll be bubbly in a joyful town and my voice will go up. And anger, fiery edge to it. The human voice has the magical ability to transmit feelings, create connections, and bridges the gap between hearts and minds. It's kind of like a fingerprint each of us possesses, a distinct, unmistakable voice, and the pitch, the tone, the cadence of our voices create a persona that sets us apart from everyone else. Believe it or not, it's this uniqueness that separates us with our loved ones. I mean, the minute you're on the phone with someone that knows you, they know your voice. They know it's nobody else but you. If they've heard your voice over and over again, it's like your timestamp on the phone. Or, if you're talking on your iPhone, I mean, they know you instantly. It's kind of a testament to you, and it's all interwoven into this little audio symphony. I don't know if I'm going off on a rant here. Anyway, if you never thought of your voice that way, do you like to hear the sound of your own voice? Because I didn't at first. I thought my voice sounded terrible. I think it's going to sound terrible in this recording too. But when I started doing audiobooks, it was a horse of a different color. It was like now I'm getting myself into this story and I'm putting emotions into it of the female character, the male character. It's a whole different ball game than just thinking all I hear is my voice. Now I'm becoming that person. So actors on a stage and radio announcers, uh, these are people that commonly go into doing what I do. Radio people, stage actors. I belong to an actors group here, and I thought, okay, well, that'll help me. I went to a couple. Now they wanted me to get up and do all of these strange things, and I go, no, I'm a voice actor. I'm not going to do that. And they said, oh, no, no, it'll loosen you up. So they wanted me to act out something. I go, no, I'll sit right here. You want me to read something out loud? I'm fine. But I'm not going to make things up on the spur of the moment. So I'm not that kind of an actor. However, I am the kind who will get behind the microphone and go into another world with my voice. So it's very common for performers to come from both either acting or broadcasting. But
Mm.
voice acting really it's acting, it's just acting off camera, which is why I love it. There's no costumes, there's no exhausting rehearsals. I'm reading the words, I'm not making them up unless I'm developing a new character voice, and there's no stage fright. I don't have stage fright. I can go back and do it over and over again until I think it sounds great. Um, I don't have to memorize a thing, and I have a love affair with my microphone. It's sometimes I can't though. There are days I go up in front of my microphone and I start to read a chapter of this book that I'm doing and it's just not there. And I know better. So I will just, abandon the task and come back at a later point. We all wake up in the morning in different moods. And sometimes our voices are better in the afternoon. Sometimes they're better in the morning. Sometimes they're better in the evening. If I'm doing a sultry voice, I want my voice to kind of sound tired and go into a whole different part. And then my audio engineer, of course, has to, adjust all the balances and stuff, but that's what the character calls for in a given moment. So here I am. I'm not dressed quite like this when I do my audiobooks. I have on a sweatshirt and some leggings, and I might probably have a baseball cap on. Today, I'm going to a baby shower right after I leave you here. Hopefully, I'm in time for it when I go. But it's not a glamorous industry that I'm in. It's just fun, and I know I'm not going to get extremely wealthy off of this. I have my income from writing. I have my income from voice acting. But to go into this late in life is a labor of love for me. So, which is why I can relax with the books that I do because I may be on deadlines, but I'm not like trying to earn a certain dollar amount every single time I read an audiobook. But it is an interesting phenomenon that your words are being read behind a microphone in a booth with a blanket up and somebody in sweats. Okay. Um, and I do stand quite a bit when I narrate. It depends on the characters that I'm trying to do. ACX, Find a Way, Fiverr, Upwork. These are all places that you can go as an independent author. There are several avenues. So, yes, do I want you to hire me for books someday if I'm the right fit for your book? Great, let's talk. But there are such a variety of voice actors out there for you to consider. Um, and independent, they have several independent authors can go to ACX, which is owned by Audible Amazon. Find a Way Voices, Fiverr, Upwork, Freelancer. There's a whole ton of places you can go if you want your book to go audio. But what I'm gonna introduce to you today though is ACX because it's the most common one if it goes onto Audible. And once you are on Audible, it goes on Amazon. So first you create a free account and you claim your title. Your title already has to be on Amazon. So you either have to have a digital or print book that you've put on Amazon. And now you can back into it and put that title on ACX to get auditions from voice actors. So once you've claimed your title, you'll create a title profile and you'll receive auditions from a whole bunch of people. And believe me, it's just off the charts what you'll hear. You'll hear people that sound like they're talking into their iPhone. You'll hear others like me that have an entire studio set up. And you're not going to listen to just the way that they read your words. You're going to listen to the quality of the sound. So don't think that just because it's an audition that they're reading an excerpt from your book, that's not what it's going to sound like when they try to do your entire book. You want it to be high quality from the very beginning. Um, and as voice actors, we appreciate your notes to give us a detailed description of the project, like performance notes, words that are not common that we need to know how to pronounce, names that are not common, foreign words that are not common. And you can do this by, eventually when you choose the narrator, by recording those words and then sending them to the narrator. But at first, just a phonetic version of the words that you think we might trip over doing your audition would be also is always appreciated. You can search for narrators online. You can, go to websites and just say, voice actors for audiobooks and just see what AI comes up with on Google. Um, uh, or you can read your own book. And I know a lot of you have done that because I go to the writers group here in Sacramento, and Clay Kerbo, his name's really Paul Turner, but he belongs to the group that I told you I did a couple of his books. And he had read his books first in his own voice. And I listened to them and I could not get past the first couple sentences. It was so boring to hear his voice. And it's not that he's not in earnest, it's just that he doesn't know how he sounds. Just like people who don't know that they're singing in the wrong key. It's kind of like you don't understand how you sound to other people because you're so used to hearing your own voice that you think you sound great. Um, but I recommend that if you're going to read your own audiobook, and in many cases, people will read their own memoirs, which is very natural, get some coaching first. There are, put out a couple $100 on a coach. Send a sample of how your voice sounds reading your book to a coach, and maybe just pay a consulting fee to say, what should I work on? But I would encourage you to, if you want people to actually listen to your entire book, to get some coaching and make yourself sound a little more presentable with your voice. Who knows? Maybe you're already great at it. I don't know. So now you're going to get flooded with auditions. Don't get overwhelmed. You'll probably rule out a whole ton of auditions right away. So the way I do it is that I go on ACX and I'll look up titles that I'm interested in. I don't do some types of titles. Um, some of them say they want a very young voice. Well, I can do that. I mean, I can really sound like a younger person if I wanted to all the time, but I don't want to do that for an entire book. So, I will choose books where my voice is a natural match with it before I'll do it. If it's got an accent, I know there's a lot of voice actors out there that can't do accents. Well, boom, I'm going to jump in. But I won't, I don't like to do erotica. I don't do, lots of romance stuff, sizzling stuff, and that's, graphic. It's just not me. I'm an old fart and I don't want to read that kind of stuff. And I can do this because I like doing it. So I'm not doing it because I have to do it. So I will choose books that really speak to me. And once I do that, I try to be one of the first people when the title comes up, because most of the time you're going to get flooded with the auditions. You're going to listen with great attention to the people that are auditioning for you because you've never heard your words read out loud like that by someone else. And you may make a very snap decision on, oh, I found my match. So oftentimes when I get a contract on ACX, it will come in within 2 days of my narration because they think I'm a good fit. Of course, if it says male voice, I'm not even going to try. I mean, male voice, no. I will be a male character, but I won't try to sound like a guy through a whole book. So once you find a voice you want to work with, you and the narrator will discuss payment terms, and payment happens by the finished hour. It's called PFH, per finished hour, or by royalty share. And I'm going to go into what both of those things mean. Most narrators for per finished hour charge anywhere from $150 to $300 per finished hour. Now, if you've got a 10-hour book, that's not a small amount of money. But it is something that, you're going to get what you pay for. I charge the lowest rate of, although I'm not a member of SAG-AFTRA, many narrators are, and SAG-AFTRA rates, the lowest rate they charge is $250 per finished hour. You will find narrators who will do it for much less. And many of them are rookies that are just getting started and they want to put a lot of titles under their belt. So, of course, choose somebody that you think is great for your book. You got to make sure that the money works for you. Um, and go from there. If you're paying outright, you can figure 9,300 words average per finished hour. So you do have to have a word count for your book. And the average is 9,300 per finished hour. Now, what do I mean by a finished hour? It means a fully produced, sound engineered, fully corrected version of your book. And before that can take place, I will read through your book again as I listen to my edited narration. I'll listen to what my sound engineer has done with it, which is really just cleaned a few things up. Then it gets sent to you on ACX. Now, I have to say, I don't understand it, but many authors will not listen to their entire book. I don't know why. But I think it's necessary to listen to your entire book before you hit the button saying, yes, I'm fine with this. Because there may be things that we didn't notice, just like writing an article, there's some things you're blind to. There's some things even narrators don't realize they've done, even when I read the same thing over and over again. So I encourage you to listen to the narrator with the finished hour of your book. So go slowly. You don't have to do it right away, even though you're eager to get your audiobook published. I would say take your time with that part. You can also arrange to split royalties or opt for a hybrid of it. ACX offers that option. So here's the way that ACX describes it. Armed with your character and performance notes and any other direction, your ACX narrator is responsible for narrating and producing a retail-ready title in full. There are built-in checkpoints along the way for you to give additional feedback and make adjustments. And when you're happy with the finished product, your narrator will submit it to ACX for quality assurance. Now, this takes sometimes another couple weeks, depending on what day you submit it, usually 10 business days before, and all of a sudden it's up on Amazon and you're going, oh my gosh, listen to this. Look, I'm on Amazon. They can hit play, read aloud, the sample that they offer on Amazon. It's just too much fun. But ACX will let me know if I have to fix something. Maybe my audio engineering didn't set something properly. I have to go back and make him, readjust some part of the narration. But once it's all approved, then and you've approved it, okay, then ACX is going to ask if you'd paid the narrator. And if I've been paid, I hit yes, I've been paid. And now the book goes out. Now we'll talk a little bit about royalty share. Royalty share sounds pretty good to most authors because, you might make less with royalty share than you would otherwise. But the problem with royalty share that many of us who've been at this for a while see is that unless you already have a book that's selling a lot on Amazon, or you already have a huge marketing plan for what you're going to do with your book, we are not convinced we're ever going to get paid. So it's kind of like, there's no skin in the game unless we know that you're already up and running. If you have a whole series of books and your first two books are already selling like wildfire, then that's a great risk for me to take to do your third book or whatever it is, or maybe it's not even a series. But if you already have a following, you know how to do social media marketing, you're good at marketing your book, and you're going to tell me what your plan is, I might jump in and do royalty share. But right now, it doesn't pay me to do that because I may spend for a 5-hour audiobook, it will take me at least 15 hours of time or more to make it a finished product. It's more than meets the eye. So when we say per finished hour, there's a lot more that goes into that finished hour than is just the words on the page. So royalty share comes from, it's a French word that refers to having a sense of royal right, especially over minerals in the late 15th century. I had to tell you the background of this, sorry. It developed into payments for the use of patents and published materials, and audiobooks like ebooks are digital files. It means that you can count on receiving much higher royalties. Um, Exclusive contracts usually guarantee around 40% royalties in your pocket, while non-exclusive typically range between 25 and 40% after factoring out the cut to your aggregator. Um, if you're able to sell the audiobook yourself, you can pocket even higher royalties. Authors Direct is a platform that you can use that doesn't do any marketing. Sales come directly to you, and you keep up to 70% of your royalties. Um, you also have a lot of freedom to run your own promotions. If you're the master at social media marketing, you have a robust email list. You don't mind putting your head down to do the work. Royalty share can truly work for you. But I'm not sure how many of us really have that under our belts. Print books, by comparison, average between 12% and 23% royalties after the print cost has been removed from your share. So, based on profit percentage, the audiobook is much higher. Chances are, however, you won't get rich on royalties, and many narrators, like myself, will only accept royalty work if you've already got a track record. Okay. I'll ask for questions at the end. I may not have explained things properly to you here, but I'll be open for a few questions. This is my website, okay? This is how I present myself to the public. You can click on any of these and hear my accents. Like I said, it's great bathroom entertainment. And if you scroll down, you'll see the movies. I had to choose the movies that I did the audio descriptions. I had to choose public domain movies. So I chose three movies that were old movies, right? And one of them was Charade, which was, it's a cute movie with Audrey Hepburn and Cary Grant. Another one, what was my other one? Well, one of them is Night of the Living Dead, which was so much fun because I had to describe the beginning of the movie, but in that particular audio description, I had to also read some titles and then go into this car that's entering a cemetery, and you see the zombie off in the background, and you don't know it's a zombie yet. It was too much fun. And so those are examples of that. And then at the very bottom, you'll see all of the testimonials from people who I've already done work for. Um,
Dina,
yes.
let me stop for a second and tell everyone that I put your website link in the chat.
Oh, great, great. Thank you. I appreciate that. My daughter helped me set this up. Our kids are much better at this stuff than we are. And then I've got a guy that helps me add things as they happen. When I have something I want to put on here, another genre or another accent, he'll help me add them. I don't bother my daughter with that part. So I'm going to give you a few tips to make a narration stand out. I, I want you to think about reading for narration if you ever think your book is going to go audio. Writing for narration, rather, not reading for narration. When you write for narration, you try to minimize dialogue tags, the he said, she said. Now, I know you want to recognize who's speaking in the book, but once your narrator knows who's speaking, because it's obvious by what they've just read, then, you know, he said and she said becomes a little bit trite with everything that they say. So it can become repetitive and distracting when spoken out loud. You have to imagine the words being, and it's great to read your book out loud. That's the best way to find out whether it sounds good. Create natural interruptions. So real conversations include interruptions, just like this one, right? And the narrator is going to pick up on what it's going to be a new paragraph, or maybe you'll do some little asterisks and say, oh, it's time to switch gears here, to change gears, and I want this to sound a little quieter. And you can even put that in your script to the narrator to say, quieter voice here. I've never seen that happen, but Create natural interruptions. Real conversations include interruptions. Write for rhythm. Think of your prose as music, using punctuation intentionally to guide pacing and breath. The guy that I'm narrating for now, he likes to separate thoughts with commas, but they're entire sentences. Now, for me to read his entire sentence with just a comma in the middle, I have to drop my voice. I have to take a breath. I have to start it like a whole new sentence. So when you're writing, be aware that the narrator is going to be reading it out loud in a way that doesn't look
Yeah.
like the same way it does in print.
Mm-hmm.
Great audio production starts with the writing, of course. When you write with listeners in mind, when you prioritize dialogue, you consider the pacing, you think about the atmosphere you create the content that the production teams can bring to life in the way that it can even surprise you. Um, I think I went into audio description. Present and future of all movies and TV shows. Everything is going to audio description now. It's really a different art form. I got interested in it because I thought, well, who am I leaving out here? People who are hearing impaired can do closed captioning, and that's been going on for years. Audio description is a lot newer than that. So we're robbing people who are sight impaired of being able to enjoy a movie. So if you go into the little part of charade that I put on my website, you'll hear Audrey Hepburn arrives in a taxi. She's saying goodbye to her friends. She enters this apartment. She's expecting it to be her home, and it's totally stripped of everything because at the beginning of the movie, she finds out that her dead husband sold all of their belongings, including her clothes. So all you're hearing is the clicking of her. If you're not seeing this, which a blind person can't see, all you're hearing is the clicking of her voice and her shrieks at what she's finding. So the audio describer will say what's going on in that particular scene and how she goes from cabinet to cabinet to see if her clothes are still there. It's fascinating. So it was Penny Serenade, Charade, and Night of the Living Dead. You'll see on my website. Okay. If we listened to our intellect, we'd never go into business because we'd be cynical. Well, that's nonsense. You've got to go jump off cliffs all the time and build your wings on the way down. That's a Ray Bradbury quote. That's why I love the guy. I'm jumping off a lot of cliffs lately, and I'm having a bunch of fun with it. And I hope you've learned something from the way I've described audiobooks and thinking about your books in that way. And I'm open for questions at this point. I'm done.
So, Dina, Bonnie had a question.
Okay.
She said, what is your daughter's name? And also she said your voice is good, but she wondered what your daughter's name is.
My daughter's name is Sophia Amoruso, and my daughter, this is hard to describe. It's kind of like I had a roulette wheel and I won with her. I have an only child. She started a business when she was 22. She became a multimillionaire by her mid 20s. It was vintage clothing. Charlize Theron was on a plane and read her book, which was called Girl Boss, New York Times bestseller. Because of her reading the book, she called Kay Cannon, who is a screenwriter who had written 30 Rock and all the Pitch Perfect movies, and said, take her book, which is a memoir by a 23-year-old, believe it or not. Um, all the things a mother does not want to read about how her kid became famous. And it became a Netflix show. The Netflix show ran for a year. I'm glad it didn't go or a season. I'm glad it didn't go past the first season on Netflix because it was about to control both her and my narrative in life because I ended up being this shitty mother, or pardon my French, in the series. I've lived a surreal life because of my daughter, which is why I'm flying to London now to go see her. But it was because she wrote a book. The very first thing she wrote was on the New York Times bestsellers list for 18 weeks and then became a Netflix show. So go figure. Um, yeah, Sophia Amoruso, Amoruso. She's
It,
a pretty
it
amazing person. I don't know how I gave birth to her.
is the Netflix thing have the same title as the book, Girl Boss?
Girl boss. It's hashtag girl boss.
All right.
And the millennials, they write very differently than we do. They're extremely transparent. They're, I don't know how to describe it. When she writes her newsletter for her followers, and she's got tons of followers, um, it's like we've never been that open with people in our lives the way that millennials are. And she shocks me sometimes. But I just have to sit back and go, it's her life. I launched her at age 18 and she never looked back. So,
Wow. I have a question, Dina.
sure.
I am reading Ken Follett's book called Never.
Hmm.
And the interesting thing about it to me, I've loved his books. I like Pillars of the Earth and the various other things he wrote. But this one sounds like, and I'm listening to it on Audible.
Good
It
for you.
sounds like it should have been written by a woman. It really comes. It's got a very strong feminine. Uh, what's the word I'm looking for? It just the
It
main
should have
one of the
been
main
written
one.
by a woman or narrated
It
by a
sounds
woman.
like something that was written by a woman. And I'm wondering if he had a woman ghostwrite it for him.
Oh, that could be.
Because
Could
the
be.
protagonist in it is a female president of the United States, and it's fairly current. It's not like from periods past, and it involves our involvement with the Middle East and all that. So the characters in the Middle East, most of them are women. That
So how does the male narrator sound trying to sound like a woman?
excuse me. It's not. What am I thinking here? It is a female narrator.
Oh, it is a female narrator.
It is a female narrator, and
Okay.
it's just like I marvel at it because it's by Ken Follett, and yet the main characters are very strong.
I'm shocked sometimes. The thing is, some authors they can fog up a mirror and get sales on their books, right? It doesn't matter what they do. Stephen King can make his book 10 times as long as anything that you would write, and it'll sell like wildfire. I listened to who's the guy that did who's the Grisham? I think Grisham had a book out. It was his most recent book. Isn't he the guy that wrote oh, he's written a whole bunch of
Whole
stuff.
bunch, you know.
Yeah, yeah. His last book, it was a male narrator, and this male narrator kept trying to do female voices within the book. And when men do female voices, they think they have to just raise their voices for a female, but still sounds like a guy, trying to
Yeah.
sound like a woman. And I was shocked that the narrator didn't sound as good as an actor for somebody as famous as that.
Hmm.
But many times it's not the author that chooses the narrator; it's the publisher when you get
Uh,
to be that big. So I have gone to some conferences like you do. I go to conferences for narrators, and I take some workshops there, and that's where I meet people who represent the big five, and they give us some advice on where to submit and what whose voice gets listened to. And men still dominate in the audiobook world for voices. I will go to ACX and find for every woman that they're asking to narrate their 10 books that they want a man for. And I'm not sure if it's always appropriate, just like you said, but it's
oh,
not in ACX, these are not publishers that are putting their books there. It's just independent authors. So
well,
he probably didn't even choose the person.
I've really enjoyed your presentation. I thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm sorry if I read too much. I usually have my notes like right there on the
Yeah.
screen, and I don't look like I'm reading. But
I was taking copious notes,
yeah,
so
okay.
it was very helpful.
Great, great. I wanted to get the whole picture of the whole audio world to you because there are so many independent authors that don't really go into earnest writing their books until midlife, and many of us are not schooled on what's happening with technology and audio. And that's the reason that I came up with this whole presentation is to help independent authors think of it. Not so much like I said, oh, choose my voice because I'll be great at your book, which who knows, I might be. But there is a voice for every book in my mind. There is a person that will take your words and do amazing things with them. And that's why you need to get a whole bunch of auditions before you choose the right one.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah. I can't hear you. Can't hear
Dr.
you.
Pan had a question.
Okay.
She's,
Oh, okay. I have a question, Dina.
Yeah.
I have a poetry book coming out soon, and the contract I need to go back read it more carefully. But my understanding is the publisher asked for the print and ebook rights, which means I still have the audio book rights. So would I be able to find a voice actor and then read the poetry book and sell the audiobook
If-
myself?
If the publisher doesn't include the audio rights, you probably could, but I would check with the publisher and just say, I can see that you've put in, ebooks and print books here, but am I free to do this on my own? They may not want you to, because they want to kind of own your title.
Yeah.
However, you can, if you have a voice actor in mind that you'd like to use, you can suggest it to them. Now, I did this with someone. It was a novel. Oh, it was a nonfiction book, kind of a novel about a famous person. And I knew that this novel had lots of Greeks in it, which I can do the Greek accent because I grew up speaking the language. And she says, well, I don't know. I'll run it by my publisher. And this book is probably going to become a movie someday. And she says the publisher only wants people that belong to SAG-AFTRA. And I'm still new enough where I don't have $3,000 to throw at joining the union right now.
Right.
And maybe I will someday. There's both advantages and disadvantages to being a union narrator. And I still have a long way to go. But no, I didn't get the job because they wanted to choose their own narrator. Well, I went on Amazon and listened to the narrator and I go, damn, I could have done such a better job than that person. What are you going to do?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Did I go over everything that you might have wanted to know about audiobooks and how they come together?
yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you for the presentation.
Great, thank you. I am not going to stick around for more past the questions because there's a baby shower that I'm missing. And the gift is sitting on my front seat. So I'm gonna head straight to the restaurant and see if I'm in time for the gift opening. But if there's anything else, you've got my website information. Shoot me an email. I think my phone number is in there if you want to talk on the phone. Even if you're thinking about making your book go audio and you just want some advice, I'm happy to speak to any authors. I'm one of you. I'm a writer. I get up and write every day. So I know how precious your words are to you. I know how many times you edit something before you put it in print. I don't know if a lot of voice actors understand what goes into writing something because they just love to read your words. But I do understand that part of it. And I'm very sensitive to trying to help you make your words very readable, at least audibly anyway.
Dina, do you use GarageBand or something? Like what software do you use when you're
I
recording?
use Audacity.
Oh, you used Audacity
I
directly.
use Audacity. There are many different DAWs you can use. I don't even know what that stands for, but it's the recording software. I got used to Audacity. I just figured it out pretty easily. But there are tons of other methods, and the pros probably the people that have the money to buy more expensive recording programs will not use Audacity. And some of them stuck with it too. But yeah, I still use Audacity.
Okay, thank you.
And when you listen to my samples on my website, you'll see those are all done in my studio. So if you've got anything you want to tell me about what I should improve, please shoot me an email. I'll be happy to take your suggestions.